Oh my God, what an all-star crew we've got today. This is really cool. Okay, Marion, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me, Adam. It's nice to be on the podcast with you again today. So I am Marion. I've been an influencer marketing consultant for the past 3 years, but I've been working in influencer marketing for the past 10. The last 6 of them specialize in mobile gaming, and I've always been really data driven, and all the campaigns that I've worked on were really performance driven. So creating this channel as influencer marketing, like as an acquisition channel for various mobile games around us.
And you've worked with Mr. Beast.
I have worked
And
with
you've worked
Mr.
with
Beast
it, which
actually
is incredible.
several times. Yes.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, no, I haven't met him personally. I had his agent on the phone when he was back at night, so Reed on the phone. Not my favorite person, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I worked with him multiple times.
Amazing, amazing. John, who are you? What do you do?
I'm John Wright.
Boom, that's it.
The brand sells itself.
I'm a brand, baby.
LinkedIn guru.
I am John Wright. I'm an independent gaming consultant. But previously, you might have, seen me in such pictures as VP of mobile gaming at Quali, or head of client services at Unity, or VP operations at Lunar Labs.
Amazing,
And
amazing.
if no one got the Simpsons
lots of
reference,
gaming history.
Yeah, I hope someone got the Simpsons joke.
I did. I was about to say. Piyush, for those of you who don't know you, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, hey, I'm Piyush. I work at Product Managers as Director of Growth. I've been there almost 5.5 years. Before that, my experience was working at InMobi and Uber. And yeah, just looking forward to the discussion.
All right, so we're going to start with I think one of the most interesting bits from the report that we're going to be talking about was actually the use of celebrities within creatives and the reasoning behind perhaps some of the stats that they showed, which is the fact that TV stars and influencers sort of and musicians to a certain extent are outperforming sort of mainstream Hollywood celebrities, which was to me was quite interesting in the fact that obviously normally you stick a Hollywood celebrity on something and it sells extraordinarily well. But the fact that a YouTube influencer, for instance, like take Mr. Beast, we mentioned Mr. Beast earlier, take Mr. Beast, is outperforming a lot of the traditional Hollywood stars. Marion, I got to start with you. Like, what's your thoughts surrounding this?
Yeah, so several things. I think we need to take Mr. Beast out of the equation because he's the only guy with so much following
An anomaly
across the world.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's a bit of an anomaly, right? So the rest of the creators are not going to have, that reach and that well-known brand, right? But then if you look into, obviously, movie stars, first of all, the thing is that compared to TV stars, or influencers, they're going to be much more expensive, right? Because, they're movie stars, they're represented by CIA, by WME, those are big agencies, right? So the rights to use their likeness and their time is going to be much more expensive. So if you look at it on a performance basis, first of all, this is the massive difference that you see between the two, right? And then on top of that, I think what makes a big difference is sort of like how movie stars feel like people that are out of reach, like they're very special, that are, not like common people. And that makes the big difference here, because then I think they're great for branding. Obviously, people know them, but they won't relate to them. They don't feel accessible. And I think that's the difference in terms of like what is going to drive any actions, whether it is download an app or purchase a product. When you see a TV star that you've seen, or someone that is on TV, you see them a lot more often. You might have more info on them, and then influencers is even a different story, because you might have access to all their life on social media, right? So that's what explains, I think, the big difference in terms of performance.
Because when I first saw it, I wondered if it's part of a sort of bigger generational change, I guess, in that, a lot of these platforms that you're going to be running these type of ads on are predominantly social platforms. That's where the influencers mainly operate anyway. So, the likes of Ryan Trahan, that kind of thing. You've got these influencers that are running on those platforms. And for the younger generations, I know with my kids, they're sort of constantly watching these streamers and YouTubers, and they're probably more famous to them than Tom Cruise or somebody that we grew up
Exactly.
with. It's like, yeah,
Exactly. There's definitely a generational gap here, like they see them on their long form YouTube video, they see them on TikTok, on Instagram, right? There's so many types of content that they create because nowadays influencers are present on all different sort of platforms. So, like they have a much wider audience. And then if you look at it, there are many creators on social media that have a much bigger following than Tom Cruise or like a Brad Pitt, right? And that's also because, yes, the audience doesn't have the same age and doesn't consume social media the same way.
yeah. What's your thoughts, John?
I think there's an element of relatability, like with like what sort of Marion said. There's certain A-list celebrities perhaps have always seemed, like I said, unattainable, unrelatable. What do they know about me, mine, and my life? And I think there's also the thing, I've always been very interested in micro influencers, right? Because micro influencers for me, in my history of testing, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars, so never hundreds of thousands like Marion, but I've spent 50 grand on one influencer a couple of times.
Is this for your trainer sales shop?
No, they pay me for that. But no, like I have over the years, especially in my early days at Green Man Gaming, we used to spend a lot of money on Co-Carnage, and he was like he was at the time he was less expensive than he is now. But obviously this was 10 years ago, right? So but he always had like a good return. But there was other people that we tested that we would spend again like 50k, and you wouldn't get the results that you would expect. And for me, I always found that micro influencers, people that had maybe like upwards of 1,000 or 2,000 followers, had the ability to like captivate the audience, and the conversion, the metrics, all of the stats, the engagement was all higher. And the way I look at it, Adam, is like in gaming, you've got like your golden cohort, right? Your golden cohort is always going to have the best results and the best stats.
Yeah.
With micro influencers, you've got that hardcore audience. You're going after that direct targeting, people that can relate to what you're doing the best. So yeah, like for me, micro influencers and getting a lot of micro influencers has always been a more interesting strategy, to be honest with you. More hard work. Like it's not as simple as going to one person, spending one amount of money and getting a huge.
But also, you have to understand that market, right? Because it's very rare, apart from the likes of Marion, it's very rare that you can go to somebody and say, "Hey, I want to run campaigns with lots of micro influencers who really understand the area that I'm working in, and I want to get the best return possible." You kind of have to have a team doing that, right?
100%.
Yeah, exactly. I think also like with micro influencers, as you were saying, John, like it's a lot of work, right? So it's either you have a big team internally that can reach out and find those creators, but it might not really be time efficient, or you find a platform or like a tool that can help you do it at scale. But then if you do it at scale, you have to accept that maybe quality is going to go down in some of the creators, but also because you're going to do so many of them. Out of those, some of them are going to outperform and some of them are going to be like the golden gems that you're trying to find. So in any of those, just like kind of balance it out.
100%.
Piyush, have you? I'm going to ask you a personal question now.
You always start with that. Don't do it. This is not our pod. Come on, this is a different pod. Look, we have tried influence as well, but going back to the larger point that I think Marianne was trying to make and John was trying to make, it's also about, I think it's the advent of OTT as well, which has sort of fundamentally changed what the definition of a movie star or a TV star is. I think that's also a very, very big reason, because traditionally the movie star used to come like 2 times, 3 times an year, right, with a movie. And that's where all the media and the sensation starts to begin. But like nowadays, because it's become so relatable, they're so approachable, you can watch, and it's on the same device. Think of it like that. It's not even cross-device. You're looking at a movie in your phone, then you're going on YouTube and you're going on Instagram searching for the celebrity. And then if you see an ad with that celebrity, it's obviously a lot more relatable. So I think fundamentally there's a psychological angle to it as well, that it becomes
But
much more
also
approachable and relatable.
with some of these YouTube channels, like there's hundreds of hours of content from, I mentioned Ryan Trahan earlier. It's only because I've been watching the Amazon stuff on him at the moment. But, you're spending a long, long time with watching these people and being around these people, that they become way more obtainable and relatable, right?
Exactly. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know if you guys face the same issue. I mean, we have tried micro influencers before in this, but like, it always boils down to the fact that how would you say that, it boils down to the fact of attribution.
But
Can you?
no, hang on. Before we get
Okay,
to
we're
that,
not going there. All right.
no, I'm interested in this. But is there, we're talking about micro influencers. Your area is social casino, right? Are there micro influencers for social casino?
Yes, there are a lot of. Let's just say it's in a similar space. I wouldn't say they're completely focused on social casino, but they are definitely micro influencers in the similar space, and we've tried it before, and we want to try it again as well, especially with the new app launch that we're planning to do.
Well, Marion's here, so
definitely would love to chat with her. But yeah, I mean, look, even for any category, because of the scale of number of influencers in the market, for any category, the influencers would exist. I strongly believe that micro influencers are there for most of the categories, unless there are extreme categories that we're not going to get into. But like it does exist. It's about how do you harness them and how do you sort of use them to generate content for you and actually create it a lot more viral sensation out of it. Like that's the whole objective.
Cool. All right, we're gonna sort of zoom out a little bit again. And one interesting thing for me, which Piyush knows this well, but I've always had this kind of, can creative really change retention within a game? And I was actually very, very, very surprised to see some of the stats here, which it's very difficult to argue with. I'm very negative on this, but it's very, very difficult to argue with the fact that, take the same game running campaigns across the board. Some campaigns with some creatives are performing better on day 7 retention, which kind of blows my mind. But what's the thoughts here, John? You got very animated.
Mate, so I saw this countless times in the Lunar days, because there was a point where we started to shift. Like during hyper casual, it was all about IPM, right? It was all about maximizing the number of users per 1,000 impressions and getting your DAO as high as possible. Like that was the game. And then as we started shifting from hybrid, to hyper to hybrid, everyone was like, okay, maybe IPM isn't the golden metric anymore, right? Like maybe just getting loads of users as cheap as possible does not do you any favors. Playrix famously spent about $500,000 on their sort of mini game strategy before it became part of their game on things that was, fake ads. And the quality of their users, of that cohort of users, was like a fraction of what they were used to, right? So they were bidding at, say, like $10, expecting to get $20 because that was the unit economics at that current time. Did the fake ad strategy, and then the unit economics went from spending $5 but making $2. So they spent like $500,000 at 60% loss, because at the time they weren't aware that that ads and campaign structure and all this other stuff can contribute to the quality of the user. Even with like looking at AppLovin and Unity now, everything's ROAS optimized, right? Everything's like to quality rather than quantity. And again, during the Lunar days, we saw a number of times a lot of different tests where playables in general brought higher ad quality or higher ad ROAS, compared to others. And I've seen countless times at Quali.
But is that the actual? I don't know. I'm still like struggling with the concept of this. If somebody is engaged with the ad, it means that they're more likely to pay in the game.
It feels like a TV debate right now. By the way, I like the unhinged John. I've done a pod with you, John, before, and now you're naming people, you're naming companies. You were very much in control before. I really like this.
Why do they brought him on? He's deconstructor of fun now. It's open season.
That's really good. But sorry, I think, Adam, we need to find a middle ground here. I've always, like, you and I, we kind of agree on in principle, but like at the end of the day, there is a middle ground, which is it also depends on the type of creative. I don't think a banner ad can move the needle on the retention, but a playable ad can.
Exactly.
Right, so
Second,
you have
yes.
that's the middle ground there. It cannot be generalized that all creatives cannot have an impact on retention. It
Yeah.
can be made an argument that some kind of creatives, when consumed well, when done well, actually can make an effect on retention. But I strongly believe, because if you look at the overall inventory and almost 60% of it is interstitial and banner, like especially in the DSP world. And when you look at rewarded video coming in and stuff like that, I'm purely talking about traffic because obviously the IPMs are CPMs are different. Then it becomes a problem. That's why we generalize it. I think those are the creative ads that we sort of generalize and say that that they should not have any impact on retention. But if somebody is watching an ad for 30 seconds, that's good enough to create an impression about the product. Also, just to find the middle ground, I don't think retention is just a phenomenon of creative for sure, because 30-second creative cannot create that impression. Product comes in at that stage. So that's the middle ground, essentially, for me.
Well, I mean, because you've also got I guess you also have the sort of honeymoon period with the app in the same time, where generally speaking, you get an abundance of resources within the app over the first 7 days or 3 days or whatever it may be, where people are way more engaged anyway. But what kind of blew my mind is you're seeing specific campaigns or specific creatives that are performing obviously better. So you've got that benchmark anyway, and then you've got ones that are performing. So it kind of it's really has changed my mind on it, which is kind of weird. But what do we think the best types of creatives? As you were saying, the banner creatives aren't the right thing there. So does that mean that the sort of UGC influencer creatives are the best way of doing this, or what?
I think reading the reports again, I think everybody talks about UGC, and a few years back it was like, oh yeah, do UGC and it's going to perform great. But now you have to really dig into it. And as you in the report, it says tutorial, reviews, testimonials, right? I think it's really important now for people to do UGC, yes, but really to test them out, test different format, different sort of storytelling to understand what then is going to perform for you, because everybody's doing UGC now, right? There's tons of agencies out there. There's tons of people doing it in house. So it's also about understanding what's the right setup for you, right? Do you want to work with the micro creators that you're already working with, take this content outside of their audience and then use it in ads, or do you want to take random people from UGC agencies that you're going to pay $50 for a creative and then test it? It's really it's different types of setup that you can test and understand what works for you. But it's not just about doing UGCs or doing influencers anymore. It's you really need to go into a lot more granularity to understand then what's going to perform and then what's going to have an impact on each of the metric that you're interested in.
So that's where the micro influencer logic comes in from John, right? That's the kind of, we find people who specialize in who are trusted talking about the areas of whatever we want to push across in our game.
But mate, you've got to remember, there's certain games like Raid have Raid influencers, right?
Yeah,
there's select IP and franchises.
I've followed them for years.
That's what I mean. Look, but any Supercell game, right, has Supercell based influencers.
Yeah,
so obviously you have to build a franchise. You have to be one of the big boys. But there are individuals who specialize in this thing. And
but those kind of companies spend a lot of time and a lot of effort working with that group of influencers. They have influencer programs where they offer access to test server, that kind of thing.
Early
where
access
they
to the
give,
game.
Yeah. So exactly. You can record stuff which you wouldn't be able to do if you were just playing the game. They also get resources and that kind of stuff every month, which enables them to record more content without having to pay ridiculous sums of money to be able to do that content.
Yeah.
So, but that in itself is quite a big thing, to have that influencer program in-house, to be able to build those relationships with the people who want to build content for your game. Is that when you were at Koala and stuff, is that something that you put focus on, or is that sort of something that's only for the big boys to do?
So we did have an influencer person in Quali. So we had someone who was managing all of this stuff for us, Adam. It was one person as part of a 70-person marketing team, to
Yeah,
put it in
yeah,
perspective, right? But we did have someone, and the predominance of their time was actually spent like contacting micro influencers and building out our pool. But it was a full-time job,
yeah.
There was very few. I would say probably a fraction of his time, maybe an hour or two a week, was talking to the big boys, like the ones who would go out, like what Marion is used to working with, spending big money, getting big traction, millions of followers. For us, it was all about just gaining, the little guys that had the better performance and growing this out steadily as a program over time. And, we did look at doing some of the stuff, what Piyush and we sort of just discussed about, exclusive access to the game. And, Zynga famously always did like these off-sites where they would invite people and,
I mean,
do
if
special
Supercell do the same,
experiences.
Raid I've seen have done the same, sort of flying
Yeah.
all of the influencers out somewhere and just making, giving them roadmap, giving them everything that's sort of coming through or certain levels of visibility. I guess it's not everything, but you're sort of showing off a bit of what the game has to offer and giving them something back.
No, but the thing is, it's about making them believe they're part of the process. It's making
It's
them
building
believe.
communities, right? It's sort of building communities essentially, not just big influencers and micro. Sorry, John, continue.
No, it's the same as these companies have been doing VIP programs, Piyush, for years, right? And
Yeah,
like more about that than I ever would,
yeah,
right? But it's the same thing, but instead of your best players, it's your best people that can bring you players, and it's about creating unique experiences, unique content, giving them something that other people can't give them or get, making them feel part of the process, the decision making. Like, how amazing is it to have a feeling of you as an influencer be saying, like, my feedback contributed to something that was added to the game?
Oh, of course.
That's something that you can't buy. Like, that's not a money thing. That's a pride thing.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Because a lot of product people are also looking at that. Like, they've built communities on Discord and Reddit and other places, and they're sort of looking at the feedback and actually implementing
Oh,
those
come
things
on. Having a group
within
of
the game.
people who are completely and utterly invested in your game and trying to win at all costs
Improve
and
the
do
game.
everything.
Yeah.
It's funny, some of these influencers, like Hell Hades, they've given feedback to Polarium many times on, this champion is far too overpowered and you need to do this, because it's just going to break the game otherwise. And I think that's invaluable, having people who actually fully understand the game. But then why do we not Marion, why do we not see more companies actually building out like influencer teams and stuff?
I think they are. I see this changing. I see like smaller companies with smaller games, like building like creator programs where the creators are going to be rewarded. Because now like people start understanding that those people like influencers or creators can have much bigger impact than just creating content for you and acquiring players for you. Like, so we've mentioned like, okay, it's a win-win because they create content that is unique. They're going to have more views. You're going to be happy because they're getting more views. They get you more traffic. But on top of that, and something that I've seen like with Supercell is like, because the creators are involved in the process, as you were saying, like sharing roadmap, like being flown to the headquarters, talking to the team, etc. The big advantage of that is like when they roll out a feature and maybe it's not well appreciated within the community, there's going to be the creator also like not being responsible, obviously, but who's going to be able to answer complaints and haters comment because they will know why it's been done like that, and it's having a second voice, third voice or whatever, that is outside of the companies, that is someone that is trusted by the audience is invaluable, right? So I think people are seeing this value in influencers, but it does take time and it does take, like resources. So I think things are starting to shift. And I do, as I said, like see smaller studios starting to build this kind of creative programs.
It's kind of very reminiscent of the PC and console world, though, really, isn't it? Because that's kind of how a lot of the PC and console world has developed over time. Is instead of it, because they haven't had the performance marketing aspect of everything, so it's been very much like we have champions of the game in all sorts of different places, and it runs off of that, the whole review process and everything else.
Exactly.
And it's yeah, I suppose it's very reminiscent of that. But then if you're building up, if the aim now is to try and build up more paid organic, I'm not entirely sure what the right term for it is. It's a really strong way of being able to build that out, and at the same time sort of have this almost build this manufactured community, I guess.
Exactly. But that's why like the profile of people doing that is really halfway community and halfway like influencer side, because you really need to understand how to build that community and how to make it grow. And it's not just like doing influencer marketing and paying creators to release content.
Yeah, and just look, I mean, completely right, Marianne, that we are moving into a world where influence marketing would become a mix. It's going to be a powerful media mix across the board for all gaming and non-gaming, aspects as well. But at the end of the day, I just want to be a bit cautious and also say that, it will still be a part of the mix. You do not make that the center proposition of the entire, because you still need performance marketing to back it up at the end of the day. Because PC and console work slightly differently because they have a lot more
That
investment in
depends
the
how
brand
big you
marketing.
are and how much money you have to throw at it, right?
That depends on the
mean,
stage of the app as well, right? At the end of the day, so
you're coming from
there are a
corporate
lot of.
gaming.
I'm not saying anything. John, you're coming from corporate gaming. Tell us more about it.
I don't know, mate. Like, I mean, the thing I think of most, it's not influencers, but the thing that I still can't get my head over recently is the King James Royal Kingdom ads, which, like obviously mimic what Supercell did with Chris Evans and this A-Star cast. And, I know a few people and they told me that this ad cost 15 million to make, right? And that's just the cost of production and the actor costs. So,
yeah, but then at the same time, I still remember the Liam Neeson Super Bowl ad.
The Arnold Schwarzenegger,
exactly. These things stick in your brain for years.
Yeah, but we're in the business of making money. Like, it doesn't make money, bro. Like, come on.
How do you? No, come on. How do you know that doesn't make money? That's.
I can tell you for
different
a fact,
forms of creation you can generate from that for years.
Do you want to do
but Adam,
math?
I think sometimes we mistake the virality of the ad with the actual impact on the revenue. I don't think they're directly associated, to be very honest. That's why I keep on coming back to, because sometimes we feel, it has happened with us as well. The ads have been consumed like crazy across the board. But when you look at the impact on the revenue, that has not increased. And it goes back to the fact that, because people miss the fundamental assumption is, first of all, if you're involving a movie star or music star or whatever, your cost of production is very high. All of a sudden, very, very high. And you cannot recoup that money if the ad, that doesn't work in the performance marketing space. I'll be very honest, especially in our genre. It cannot just be an influencer gig. It can give you an uptake in organic, but it's not going to move the paid needle that much. If fundamentally. So I do believe, and there are cases on both the sides. There are ads that have worked for sure, but there are a lot of ads that have not worked, even though they are viral in this space. And we don't want to name names. I can't name names. John can. But it's just a reality.
Yeah, look, for me, like if we're looking, let's say for example that Supercell are the best at what they do and they have a 50% margin, right? That means that they would have to do 30 million of paid marketing at 30% profit to pay for just the production of the ad.
Yeah.
Let alone all of the other costs. So like they have to make, off the back of this ad, they have to make approximately 75 to 100 million, off the back of this ad for, I think, to be worth it for that production cost with the UA impact and stuff like that. And yeah, look, they've got more money than God. They can do what they want, But again, us mere mortals who are not working at companies that make $1 billion a quarter, we can't do it. Okay, so yeah, look, if you want to make a pile of money and set it on fire, like, maybe in the future, donate it to a good cause. I've got a few charities that could do well with that money.
And also, we do need to talk about small developers. I think we tend to focus a lot more on the big players.
I've got a really good topic for small developers.
All right.
So AI. Now, it enables mass creation of assets, but does it work? Are we seeing anything good from it? Is it useful? And like, how on earth? From my mind, it just moves the bottleneck from asset creation to testing effectively, because you're suddenly having so many more assets that you need to test to see which ones are working. If you can find a hero creative, blah blah blah. So how are you dealing with that? I mean, this is probably one for Piyush because he's probably doing it right now. But how do you deal with that problem?
Uh, Look, you do have to invest money into the testing part for sure. There's no other way around it. But the fact remains that you can put some sort of guardrails to minimize the number of creatives that are being generated through AI. It cannot be just a random, blanket. And we do have our legal teams coming in and approving each and every creative and stuff like that. So that obviously reduces the number of creatives that we're going to test at the end of the day.
Yeah, but just say for a minute that I'm talking about the best place to start from a small studio, let's say.
Yeah.
If you're okay, we can ping off. Now we can ping off like 100, 200, 300 creatives to test where we should start with creatives. What do?
You don't want to test those many creatives at one go. So like if the performance marketing guy has to be really, really sharp and understand that, you can't test 200 creatives at one go. You can be prepared. So you can prepare for the next 3 weeks or 2 weeks kind of a thing, where you can keep on testing on the side where it's a very small budget. But in the main campaign, you only having, I don't know, 5 to 10 creatives per campaign, not more than that. So, I mean, depending on the platform, there are a lot of nuances there. What number of creatives do you want? You can always create a pipeline that, okay, if the creative gets fatigued, then we can replace it. But at one point, you cannot have more than 10 creators per campaign. And I'm giving you a rough number because it varies at a platform level. So that has to be the case. But it has really helped small developers because it just reduces the creative cost.
Yeah.
And the cost of the production as well at the end of the day. So it has helped quite substantially.
Does it work in your opinion? Does it work as well as spending that money actually creating a one-off creative rather than doing it through AI?
I believe so. I'll tell you from my perspective, and people can disagree on this.
Oh, I'm sure
AI
they will,
right now, AI right now has helped a lot with the editing part. Get the creatives edited, get the creatives sorted, especially at big companies. I'm not talking about smaller companies because they build the creative from scratch through AI.
Yeah.
But for big companies, they have helped tremendously with the editing part, getting the turnaround quicker on that. But for creation part, given that every big corporate lives in the world of a lot more legal hurdles and, a lot more
It's much
limitations
slower
on
anyway.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think it has reached to a level where it can absorb all the limitations and actually create a creative with that limitation. I don't think we have reached to that level. So that's where I'll split it. But for small developers, I do believe it's a very, very strong one.
Yeah, look, Piyush is talking purely from a corporate standpoint. Like I'm an investor in half a dozen studios, right? And a lot of them are small companies, which are 10, 15 people. And one of my studios recently went to a Facebook offsite in Barcelona, right? And Facebook, part of that, it was a 3-day thing where Facebook isolated like 10 companies that they want to spend time with for the future, right? So future prospects of gaming. And one of the feedbacks that Facebook gave was you should be testing 50 creatives in a campaign in Facebook. Like that's the new norm for Facebook is they want
50 creatives in a campaign.
50. That's what the
That's not what we have been told, by the way.
Yeah, no. But this is what the Facebook expert has advised these people.
Right.
Is like,
we need to get Facebook on next time.
Which, by
I think
the way,
so. They're giving mixed messages here.
But the thing is, all of these 10 companies were all small companies. And what I was explaining to the CEO of the company is, if you test 50 creatives, you need enough impressions, which equals money to test each of those creatives,
Exactly.
right? So if you don't have 10 grand to put on one campaign, which they don't, right? Because they're a small startup that's just raised. They can now because they've just finished raising, but before they couldn't. So it's like Facebook want to increase the number of creatives and test them as quick as possible to get to the penultimate success. Like they want to do that, and but if you look at the SDK platforms, you're talking 4 creatives in a campaign, 5 if you're pushing it.
Yeah.
So, but it's from my perspective, guys, and again, I'm approaching this from someone who's spending a lot more times with startups and small studios and stuff like that. But for us, AI has been tremendous. Like we've been using Creatify to do like UGC right? Because
Yeah.
we can't afford to pay actors. We can't afford to pay someone $500. But if
Yep.
you get a Creatify license for $20, I can have 50 different types of actors. I can have an Asian guy. I can have a white woman. I can have a black man, old man, young man, like curly hair, straight hair.
Quite a
I can choose what the hell I want,
diverse group, yeah.
like I
But then
can choose anything.
you've got to test those, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you have to know what resonates with your audience.
Dude, we did it at Quali and we paid actors, right? And we found this particular actor, which was this American guy who had this really tight knit, curly blonde hair, and people were just obsessed with his hair. And that was the defining feature. No, because we tested like dozens of actors, like paid actors.
Yeah.
And we did a focus group and we said, what is it about this guy? And they were like, we love his hair. And I was like, what the
Don't do focus groups, Sean. Like that'd be my suggestion. Just stop doing that. No, that's a joke. But
hang on.
I have a follow up with John. Sorry, I just have a follow up with John. So because I agree, that's what I said. Like small developers different, corporate different. But it's can you still answer the question, which is like with AI, you would have like for a small studio, you will have like 300, 400 creatives generated.
Yeah.
Who is creating a guardrail to say that, okay, it doesn't make sense to test all those creatives. Let's remove them, only test 10, 15, 20 or whatever. Like who is doing that within? I'm helping you as a co-host. Sorry, John.
I think this is the good point. So like if we zoom back out, because we deep dived onto UGC bit, but like AI has been important because of localization. It's been important of doing small changes like background colors, character replacements, CTA differences, install now, install blah, blah, blah. All of this stuff where, some studios don't have like a marketing or video designer or and in some of the studios, again, where I'm an investor, the CEO or the VPs are doing this stuff because, they don't have a marketing team yet, right? They're doing all this stuff themselves. So it has the honest answer is that the founders or the senior leadership are the ones that are deciding what creatives should be tested. And the thing is, for most of the time, these people have come from gaming, right? So like they've worked in studios, they've been executive producers, or they've been senior product people, and they've been in the industry for a long time. But God, Piyush, if you're coming in a startup with no history and no eye for the game, you're screwed. Like you're just blinded, and you don't have the money to be able to test 500 creatives. Like you just don't do it. So it can be a case of you can't see the tree through the woods, or what's the saying, Adam?
Can't see the wood through the trees.
Wood through the trees. Like that's the thing. Yeah, I got that completely 360. But yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so you are right though. You can make a lot of crap. But on the other hand, if you know what you're doing and you keep it very targeted and isolated, and you have proper testing process and guardrails, etc., AI has. And also think about the designers and people who used to spend days a week doing like color changes, localization,
the editing part.
like all those. No one wants to do that. No one. So, but now hopefully the designers are working on. Because there's a big difference between like concept and iteration as well, right? And I think the designers should be working on different concepts.
I think that's where that's the shift that has happened in the large corporates, in my opinion. Working more on the concepts and the iteration, because iteration is being taken care of by the AI. Essentially, that's and for small developers, I think it's a mix of both. But yeah, I mean, AI has a problem of abundance. Basically, that's the problem. It has a problem of abundance.
Sorry, I've got one more question on this. Like from your perspective, Piyush, like do you? Because of the mass creation of creatives, horrible term. Have you had to sort of create testing plans which are way more extensive than they used to be, presumably?
Yes, we have in fact partnered with with a company outside that purely does creative testing for us.
I see.
So we have reached to that level because obviously our marketing spend is that high that we can afford to do it. So again, I
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to bring back to the conversation of corporate versus a small developer, but like
Yeah,
we
no, I
do
was just
have that kind
interested
of,
how you, because
yeah, no, we do.
like I was saying at the
And we
beginning,
do
that
it.
bottleneck sort of shifts,
I mean,
and you've got to
over
deal with
there,
that somehow.
my fight is only with the fact that what do you call a winning creative, on the basis of ROAS or on the basis of IPM? That's where I keep on fighting the battle. But, people differ. But, at the end of the day, we do have a separate.
Or
So
day
what I've
90
created is a
retention.
creative, sure, a creative repository, a creative testing platform, and then obviously the main live campaigns where we push the creative once we have the hero creative coming in. So we have created over the past 2-3 years, we've created that whole fund.
And do you find that that's down to, I mean, logically, I guess it's down to each individual company to define what a hero creative is to them. But what did you go with in the end?
We
Can
really
you,
want to
can
do
you
this.
say?
It's
Can you say? Come on, say.
we have talked about this
Girlfriend's
multiple
here.
times. Look, I went with a mix of both because I could not convince. I wanted UA managers to take the call. Some of them are convinced of the ROAS angle, ROAS day 7. Some of them are convinced of the IPM angle. I personally am more in favor of IPM than ROAS day 7. I think especially the revenue part is a lot more dependent on the product and the quality of people that you brought in than the creative itself.
But
That's my
it
perception
has
on
to
it.
be like the tutorial. Everything has to have an impact on that, right?
It's I don't know
Right,
what you want me to say
you
because you've
talking?
already.
But what are you talking about, Adam? Like segmenting in the for TUI? Because if it's the same for TUI as both creatives, then there is no difference, right?
No, it's the same for TUI, but the problem is like it depends on the targeting of the users, the kind of quality of users you're bringing in. And also if the ROAS is a factor, it also depends on the individual, right? I mean, some individuals tend to reload the coin maybe after 7 days. Some individuals tend to reload the coin before 7 days. So you cannot generalize it. You cannot say the creative of 30 seconds has an impact on what you're buying or purchasing 7 days later. I strongly believe it could be a factor if you've seen in a playable ad that that level is about to come up and you're still playing within the game. But most of the time, I want to rephrase it. Most of the time, that's not that big a factor in terms of purchase. I think it's 80% product, in my opinion. That's where I am. That's where I am.
But then, if all the campaigns are going from the same baseline and you're seeing a clear rise in ROAS on one of those campaigns, then the baseline is irrelevant, isn't it?
No, but within the campaign, you have 10, 15 creatives, and every single creative has a different number, right?
Yeah, also you
It's
have
a different
custom
IPM.
product
Sorry,
pages.
I meant creative, not campaign.
And this, and that's a good point, John, because I strongly feel like, IPM, even I have an issue with IPM as a metric altogether, purely because of the fact that it has two different components, the CVR and CTR.
Yeah.
And with the rise of CPP and with the rise of, Google has also launched their own version of CPP on their side, we are underutilizing the value of the landing page, which means a CTR would show it's irrelevant in most of the cases, especially when you're working with TSPs because CTR is so high. But it still brings a lot of value because CTR would actually be a reflection on the creative and CVR would be a reflection on both creative and the landing page.
Yeah.
And if the landing page is in sync with creative, I think the conversion automatically improves. So IPM also fundamentally for me, yeah.
But do you? Sorry, I'm really interested in this now. Is this another area that are you currently tailoring like landing pages to the creatives?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are trying. I think John would also know, and Marianne would also I think on the influencer side also, I think pretty sure we are sort of doing this because it fundamentally makes sense from a user psychology perspective, right? I mean,
Yeah,
at the end
for
of the
sure.
day,
I mean, if you're coming in through an influencer campaign and you see
exactly.
that influencer on the landing page on the App Store, then it makes complete sense. Yeah.
In fact, changing the events on the App Store based on what you're running, a lot of things can be done in there. Like but fundamentally, I believe going back to the main point that IPM has two different factors. People tend to forget that it has CVR and CTR and different sort of relation to it.
No, that's really interesting, actually. Marion, where do you stand on that? Is that something you encourage?
No, yeah, definitely, 100%. And I was actually thinking about a campaign that I did with Mr. Beast another time. We were expecting so many views that we knew like it would be worth it to extend the funnel and related to the influencers. So we actually changed the game icon on the app stores to reflect. It was because we created a character around Mr. Beast, and so the game icon reflected an egg from that character that was Mr. Beast with all the colors and everything. And so we had the full user journey from the video to the store, and then a pop-up in the game with to explain like people like where do you find the content related to this influencer, right? So you can play the game, play this mini event to obtain it, or you can go directly to the shop, purchase the character, right? And the performance was incredible, right? So I would definitely recommend as well looking to landing pages or like extending the relation with the creator, with anything that you're working with.
Amazing. All right, so I just want to go through some of the key takeaways that Appsflyer dropped at the end of the report, because I think some of them are quite interesting. So the first one is understanding your true motivations. Beyond knowing which color or copy works best, deep dive to understand the real motivation and psychological triggers that would make them stop scrolling. Like, where do you start? I mean, they're nice words, but where do you actually start in doing this?
Well, I mean, you understand your psychology of your player for the game you've developed, right? Like,
well, come on, say you're a small studio. Do you always understand the psychology? Because a lot of small studios will say, they'll start off with the concept of a game and not necessarily know the users that they're building the game for.
You don't know who your ICP is when you're building a game. You don't know who you're targeting.
I've seen quite a few that don't. Okay. It's not necessarily mobile's more focused on who they're building for, whereas PC and console is a little more like building
money driven. Yeah, money driven.
Yeah, money.
Look, I don't know. Like, for me personally, whenever every game I've ever worked on, I have researched the TAM, the audience, competition, blah blah blah, and I've had a very good understanding of exactly who we were building the game for and why.
Cool.
So,
fair enough.
So creative is just an extension of that understanding, right? We talk about the economics of games and
how deep have you gone? Like, for each. So. Select one of your portfolio at the moment. Mm-hmm. Like, how deep have you gone into the understanding of those users and the sort of motivations behind what the creative would hold? Or, I mean, obviously you're doing it from the game perspective, but how deep have you gone into that for just take one of those at random?
So the thing is, I wouldn't say we've done it to that depth on the creative side, but we have done it on the product side, right? Like, you have independent play testing with the likes of like Playtest Cloud, right? And you're looking at, as well as doing external play testing to understand what the user is feeling, what they're thinking, what their decision making is, what direction they go into and why. Like, again, you're understanding all of this stuff. And then you've also got your internal testing circles, right? When you put a game out to the rest of the company in Slack and say, hey guys, play this, give us feedback, da da da. But so you do all of that within the game, Adam. I think some big companies, like I imagine like Voodoo or someone doing this on the creative side as well, because they have like thousands of people. But definitely on the game side. On the creative side, I haven't seen it to the depths or the complexity of that we would do on the game, or understanding the behaviours on the game side. Other than what we used to do internally at Quali was we would have like a monthly creative sync with all of the executives and the marketing team, and they would present the creatives to us, and we would understand which one was a hero creative and why, and da da da. But I wouldn't say we got into the only one I can remember. We did some stuff around. There was in Text Express. There was a main female protagonist, and we did a backflash to her as a child, and there was like walking across a bridge, and the bridge snaps, and a shark jumps up, and it's like tries to eat her, and then it like ends. It's all like cinematic, right? There's no gameplay here. It's pure, like someone's built this. It was beautiful, but that was all about like creating the. I don't know, maybe not behaviour, but they're trying to create an emotional response to the protagonist and their journey and all of that stuff, which is tapping into something. So, but I wouldn't say we did much more than that, to be honest.
Fair enough. Marion, what do you say? Because it's very similar to choosing which influencers to work with, no?
It is in a way, but at the same time, like with influencer marketing specifically, like it's so hard to really pinpoint what did perform and what drove that performance, because there's so many factors that can impact the performance, right? Like imagine we're talking about YouTube long form videos where we integrate a 60-second integrated sponsored segment. Obviously the influencer itself, like their audience and engagement rate, the tone of voice, how they presented the game, if was there any sort of story around it, any personal take on it. But then on top of that, it's like when the video was published, did it perform better or worse than average, right? So and the thing is that when you find one creator that does perform and you want to try to replicate it, and you find on paper two influencers that are exactly the same, the other one might perform completely differently, like as in really, really bad, when on paper everything was similar, right? So it's really, really, as I said, hard to try to pinpoint what did perform. So I think it's a lot about like testing in quantity and try to take a step back from that specific influencer, but more trying to understand like on a vertical level, like true crime, gaming, etc., and try to then look into those in more detail. Because obviously in gaming, okay, that might be a good vertical for you, but within gaming you have tons of sub verticals, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's really understanding this, but I would not recommend like looking really at it on a ad level, like on a creative, like influencer level.
Cool. The last one that I'm going to go into is diversify creatives per media type. The same creative concept can deliver completely different results depending on the media type. Tailor each ad's messaging, format, and narrative to the media source's strengths and keep experimenting to find channel-specific sweet spots. I mean, that makes a lot of sense in terms of don't put something that would work on Facebook on TikTok, presumably because they operate in a different way.
There are some that work though, like Unity and AppLovin, like both index highly against playable ads. And a lot of the time, what we would do is we would test like playables on one of those in like a soft launch environment, and then we would run it on like on AppLovin or Unity, and we would get similar results. So it does depend on the media source, but if the media sources are similar, then you can get similar results. But if the environments are completely different, you can get vastly different results out of them.
Okay.
I think it boils from the fact that what kind of inventory you're sort of accessing. Unity and AppLovin, if you're accessing a similar inventory, then obviously the creative would work. But if the inventory is almost different, like Meta and Snapchat, for example, right? Completely different sort of people, completely different gender, age, everything, demographic is quite different. Then obviously your creative has to speak a different language. So it boils from the fact as to what kind of inventory or the traffic you're accessing with this. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
There probably will be somebody, to be fair.
If anyone is listening, Adam,
please feel free to ping Piyush.
Yeah, exactly. Tell them to phone Piyush. That's it. Just like phone me. This is my number.
Come on.
079 now.
I was talking about the panel because all three of you nodded heads, so I was just giving a verbal agreement that everybody agreed on the panel.
We could go on for days on this. It's absolutely fantastic, and please, to anybody who hasn't already, take a look at the Appsflyer gaming report. I'll put the link below somewhere down here.
It's a great report. There's a lot of good information there. Check it out.
I saw your LinkedIn post on it. That's what spurred this. I haven't got a whiteboard, but I thought it was a nice way of being able to chat a bit about it. Cool. Look, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I absolutely love doing these things. So and it's nice to do it with friends. So that's even better. Thank you very much, and I'm sure I'll see you all in Barcelona.
Thanks for having us. Cheers. Thanks.